We're from the Flying Alpacas Book Club. I am Katelin.
I'm Adhisri.
And I'm Nishanth.
Today we're interviewing the awesome poet Vaughan Rapatahana.
Hi, Vaughan. Can you start by telling us a bit more about yourself?
I can. I'm not quite sure what you need to know. I'm an old guy. I'm a pensioner now. I'm lucky I've got that to that age. And in New Zealand, our house is in Mangakino, which is southwest of Tokoroa. But we spend a lot of time overseas, especially in winter, because it's too cold, tino pakariri in New Zealand. So we've just come back from 2 months in Hong Kong and Philippines. Why? Because our children live in Hong Kong, and my wife's family lives in the Philippines. So we go and see them, and also because it's nice and warm. And I'm a writer. When I feel like it, I'm not a full-time writer because I don't really want to be. I'm lucky I can write when I need to or when I have to, when I'm asked to write something, or fulfilling contracts for textbooks and things like that. But if I don't want to write, I don't write. And sometimes, if you don't mind me talking a bit more, you can't write. Sometimes you don't have the muse, the M-U-S-E, or the desire to write. And if you're a poet, you're sometimes lucky a poem will just come to you and you can write it down. Other times, there's nothing there.
When did you start writing poetry?
I think I started writing poetry when I was in my teens, but it was rubbish when I look back at it now. I think, oh, it's very immature and I'm quite embarrassed by it. I wrote when I was working in Mount Wellington. In the 1980s, I wrote a couple of books and they were published at the Auckland University. Then I stopped writing for about 20 years because I had nothing really much to say. And I started really getting into it when I was back in Hong Kong in 2007. Ever since then, I've really put a lot more time and effort into writing all sorts of genre, not just poetry. I just had a novel published last year, a second novel, and things like that. So I've done a lot of writing, but only really in the last 12 years.
Where do you usually get your ideas from?
Like, if you're travelling a lot and you're getting quite old, you've had lots of experiences and done lots of things, ideas are always out there. And I guess to go back to the travel thing, because Philippines is vastly different to New Zealand, Hong Kong's vastly different to both, and right now Hong Kong is undergoing really unsettled time and lots of demonstrations and anger. And so there's lots of things you can write about, all these different experiences like that.
How long does it take you to write a poem?
As I said before, Katelin, sometimes they just come to me. Not often. And sometimes there's months in between writing a poem, and I try to force myself to write one, especially if I want to enter a competition or someone's asked me to write one. But other times it just strikes me, some sort of inspiration, and it'll come out, it can be done that day. But I always go back to my poems, save them for a few days or a week, and then go back and think, oh, I can improve that a bit more. And normally, while we're talking, I don't normally write it on a computer. I often write it out in longhand first, or put it on the computer and go back to it and change it all around. So it's a hard one to answer. Some very fast, some I get the idea, might write the first 2 lines and just never go back to it, or do many months later.
You've edited several anthologies. How do you choose the best poems to go in them?
Through my own choice, but what I always do when I edit anthologies is get other people to give their opinions. So the last anthology I did was Ngā Kupu Waikato, which is Waikato words, the first ever collection of Waikato-based poets. So I chose a lot, but there's a middle group of poems, of about 30 poems I sent off to 2 leading Waikato poets. That's Bob Orr, who lives up north of Thames, and Mary Taito, who's a Rotuman lady who lives in Hamilton. And I said, look, I can't choose here, you guys or girls choose. So that's how you do it. You get a group to help you, okay? Not just all coming from me. And they disagreed with some of my choices, and we put those poems in. That's how we do it.
What do you think makes a good poem?
Like we said in the sessions we had, it really strikes you in a different way. The content is about something you've not even thought about, but generally the way it's written and the way the words are put together, or the images, or the poetic language, and if it's a combination of really good imagery and language and the content, you know it's a good poem. There's still a lot of originality out there in poems. Aisha also, she writes all over the page. You don't just write in straight lines, you don't just write same line length all the time. You can use italics, you can use macronization, you can use different fonts. So poetry becoming more and more visual as long as you perform it. Good poem. But what I think is a good poem, Nishanth, doesn't mean to say other people think it's a good poem. I've entered poems into competitions, I think, wow, I'm going to win this. I get a rejection letter. So it's subjective. And it always will be. So don't be despondent if you get letters saying, we didn't consider your poem, because other people will think it's great.
What do you love most about writing poetry?
What do I love? I think it helps me sort out my own thoughts and feelings, especially about sad or serious things that have happened, tend to happen through your life. The poem will help you get that out of your system. Okay? Or you might be angry. I'm angry about the way the world is being treated, the wildlife, the climate and things like that. So I write poetry about those things, trying to address those issues.
Are you working on anything at the moment?
I'm working right now on a new book for Essential Resources in Christchurch for years 5 to 6 poetry, multicultural poetry for years 5 to 6, not just from New Zealand. And I've got 17 poems from all over the world, from people I know, from in Hong Kong, Macau, Australia, and New Zealand. And I've got these 17 poems. Now I've got to do the work of doing the exercises that go with them, which I haven't even really got around to, but it won't take me too long to do. So I'm working on that right now. That's one book it's contracted I have to do. There's other books as well, but they're different subjects. They're not poetry. Katelin.
Here are some quick fire questions. Do you prefer to write in the morning or in the evening?
I would tend to think later in the day. I take a while to get started. Yeah, later in the day, about evening, but later in the day. Not so much in the morning. Yep, quick fire questions.
Do you prefer music or silence?
Generally silence, but sometimes music moves me to write. Well, that's something else you can put into your poems is lyrics. Just from a song, you might put it at the top, or incorporate a couple of lines from the song in your poem, because it helps amplify what your poem's about. I often use whakatauki. You know what whakatauki are? Whakatauki is expressions, one sentence expressions in Māori that come across like an epithet or a moral. Sometimes I put at the top of the poem one whakatauki which sums up what's going to come down underneath. I always give a translation because most people can't read te reo Māori. Okay.
Do you prefer pen, typewriter or computer?
No, typewriter, no. Although Bob Orr, my mate Bob Orr, who's one of New Zealand's leading poets, still uses a ribbon typewriter. He doesn't have email or internet, so he's annoyingly difficult to contact. And he's writing the old system on a typewriter. But some people still do that. And he sends his poems off in the not by email attachments, but in letters with big screens of paper. I use typewriter sometimes, but sometimes if I'm not, I use computer sometimes, but if I'm not near a computer, I will just write it out in longhand. Okay? And then type it up later. And it often changes between the longhand and the computer version.
Vaughan, some of our classes are doing spine poetry at the moment.
Yes.
Should we give it a try?
Yeah, go for it.
Let's give ourselves 2 minutes each to come up with the book spine poem. On your marks, get set, go!
Oh, so we all write our own one. Okay. Wow, this could be very interesting. Only 2 minutes.
Only 2 minutes. Here are our poems. Secret superhero, vanished, ambushed, field of fear, then everything went wrong.
Here we are, after the fall. I'm out of my mind, but I'm undercover. Leave me alone.
I am sad. A big guy took my ball all summer long.
Go, girl. No talking. Float. Then the end.
Thanks for talking with us, Vaughan.
Thank you for that. Kia ora mo tēnei kōwhiringa. Thank you for the opportunity. Okay, thank you.